Olá, muito bem-vindas e bem-vindos ao Challenge Accepted.
Hola, bienvenidos al Challenge Accepted, adolescentes y jóvenes frente al trabajo infantil. Antes de comenzar, les recordamos que pueden seguir este lanzamiento en español, inglés, francés y portugués al seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia en la parte inferior de sus pantallas. Mi nombre es Mónica Magallanes, soy futurista, especialista en innovación y creadora de contenido en el Future. Y hoy tengo el honor de acompañarlos en esta fecha tan especial donde conmemoramos el Día Mundial contra el Trabajo Infantil. Este año hay un evento importante. La Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas declaró el año 2021 como el Año Internacional para la Eliminación del Trabajo Infantil. Hoy estamos aquí con un grupo inspirador de activistas y representantes de organizaciones juveniles de América Latina y el Caribe, quienes, a través de sus experiencias y vivencias expresadas en nuevos formatos de comunicación, reflexionarán sobre los retos que implica la educación en tiempos de pandemia, el desarrollo y el bienestar de las juventudes durante el periodo de confinamiento, las perspectivas de este sector de población sobre el futuro del trabajo y su compromiso como agentes de cambio frente al trabajo infantil. Ahora, para erradicar el trabajo infantil, los convocamos para celebrar el Día Mundial contra el Trabajo Infantil, el cual busca acelerar los esfuerzos para lograr la meta con urgencia y determinación desde nuestros diferentes roles. En este evento tenemos un evento promovido por la OIT a través de la Iniciativa Regional América Latina y el Caribe Libre del Trabajo Infantil y la Oficina de Brasil con el apoyo del proyecto de algodón con trabajo decente y cumplimiento de los principios y derechos fundamentales del trabajo en Brasil. Queremos aprovechar la oportunidad para agradecer a la Agencia Andaluza de Cooperación Internacional para el Desarrollo, la Agencia Brasileña de Cooperación, la Agencia Española de Cooperación Internacional para el Desarrollo, el Foro Nacional de Prevención y Erradicación del Trabajo Infantil, el Ministerio Público de Trabajo y Justicia y de Trabajo que nos apoyaron en este evento, quienes son socios fundamentales en la lucha contra el trabajo infantil. Finalmente, agradecemos a la Marcha Global contra el Trabajo Infantil, que ha sido un socio clave en la integración de ex trabajadores y trabajadoras infantiles en este encuentro. Hoy estamos aquí para escuchar las necesidades de las juventudes de América Latina, no solo a través de sus voces, sino también a través de las diversas formas de comunicación que cada vez son más utilizadas por los jóvenes y con las cuales debemos familiarizarnos para poder entender mejor lo que están hablando las diferentes generaciones. Estamos comprometidos en asegurar los derechos y las oportunidades para los jóvenes. Y esto significa comprometernos con nuestro papel fundamental como agente de cambio que desde sus diferentes liderazgos tendrán un compromiso frente al trabajo infantil. De acuerdo con las recientes estimaciones mundiales, hay 8,2 millones de niños, niñas y adolescentes trabajando en América Latina y el Caribe en el 2020. De los cuales 5,5 millones están realizando trabajo infantil peligroso. Noemí en Argentina y Henry de Ecuador son dos jóvenes que atravesaron por esa situación durante su niñez y hoy están comprometidos en su día a día con la reducción del trabajo infantil. Ahora vamos a escucharlos en sus testimonios. Le damos la palabra.
Hola, mi nombre es Noemí Rosales, tengo 23 años, soy de Argentina, Tucumán. Yo formo parte de una organización civil llamada Crecer Juntos y vengo a compartirles un poquito mi historia. Bueno, donde yo nací, crecí, hay muchas historias similares a las mías. ¿Qué quiero decir con esto? Bueno, por ejemplo, yo vengo de generaciones que pasaron por la misma situación que la mía. Por ejemplo, yo empecé a trabajar a los 10 y 12 años y mis papás también empezaron a trabajar desde niños, mis abuelos, mi mamá. Y bueno, porque somos una familia numerosa y a mi papá no le alcanzaba la plata para darnos de comer a todos, entonces nos movilizó la necesidad de comer, la necesidad del hambre. Bueno, yo creo que las herramientas principales para combatir contra el trabajo infantil es, primero que nada, combatir el hambre, luego sería acompañar y escuchar. Son dos herramientas muy importantes para cambiarle la vida a muchos niños y niñas que están atravesando una situación como trabajar desde muy pequeños. Y nada, les quería compartir algo que nos pasa a nosotros los pobres. Nosotros los pobres, cuando a medida que vamos creciendo, nuestros sueños cambian. Nuestro sueño de ser enfermero o de tener una carrera universitaria pasa a soñar con tener una casa, con tener un par de zapatillas, con tener abrigo y con tener comida todos los días en la mesa de nuestra casa. Y bueno, yo sinceramente de todo corazón eh, espero que en algún momento esto cambie, ¿no? Porque le va a cambiar la vida a muchas personas, desde niños hasta grandes, a toda la familia, y todo va a ir cambiando y mejorando para bien.
¿Sabías que en el Ecuador más de 500.000 niñas y adolescentes trabajan?
Did you know that in Ecuador more than 500,000 children and adolescents work? I was a child worker. Hello, everyone. My name is Henry Vilco. I'm a part of the Center of Development and Self Management of DYA Ecuador. I work in the project of prevention and eradication of child labor. I was a child who worked from 5 to 14 years old selling various products. And when I was a child, I worked so many times selling candy, fruits, vegetable, cleaning windshield, and sometimes also perform begging for Christmas and New Year. The difficulties in the education field, the lack of concentration in classes, and due to fatigue, hunger, and sleep, poverty prevented me from acquiring the materials that I needed in school. However, I decided to go ahead and didn't give up. When I entered school, I decided to study at night and work all morning. It was very exhausting, very hard, but nevertheless, I managed to graduate from high school. The street is a constant danger since you can always suffer a traffic accident, danger, or falling into criminal gangs, fall into the consumption of controlled substances, including malnutrition, family problems, school dropout. But the saddest thing is that they stole my childhood. The feeling of working from a very young age, it was very sad. I watch as many children enjoy and play in their childhood, while I lost I lost it completely to help my family. The fear in the street was very constant. I had the fortune to meet good people. A lady gave me the list of supplies that I needed every year during my school period, and a man gave me shoes in the same way. In this way, you have to understand that child labor is not a game and that we should not support and encourage this situation to continue to happen, young people. Remember that you can make a difference. Thank you very much for sharing with us to creating a fair society. Thank you so much to face this reality. And in order to talk about this reality, I would like to welcome the regional director of ILO, Mr. Benicio Pinedo. Monica, in the name of the ILO and the Regional Initiative Latin America and the Caribbean Free of Child Labor, I would like to welcome you all to this regional encounter that together we can celebrate this day as part of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor. I also would like to share a story from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, she wakes up at 4 a.m. to work selling tissues. She goes with her mom. Her mom lost her job due to the pandemic, and now she is trying and working informally. Elizabeth School was closed last year due to the pandemic, and in some way, they have to compensate the lack of the resources that they currently face. She said that only she has a very old cell phone and the internet is very expensive, so she cannot continue studying. And it's the same story of thousands of children as Elizabeth, as Henry, and Noemi. They are part of this 8 million that Monica mentioned of children who are working in poor homes due to the pandemic. We have an estimation that we did with ECLAC. There are a lot of kids facing this risk, and that tends to create a historical trend. And it has also created this new global estimation published by ILO and UNICEF on affecting and impacting children and adolescents. That has been some of the worst things of this pandemic. We are facing a major challenge and to reduce the strength. That's why we are facing 8.2 million girls that are working to eliminate child labor. And of course, it's a very complex situation. The increase of poverty, the increase of inequality that has been intensified by this crisis and the incredible impact on children and adolescents. And something very important to mention that Monica mentioned too as well. Young people, they need to be part of this solution. It's fundamental that we create this space to give you all, as a representative of your adolescent nations, on what we can do to change these processes and to eliminate child labor. Also, our countries working together on social dialogue, and we would like to receive those facts. And of course, they will be translated into a fair future. It's important to change those patterns, such as the case of Noemi. It's the way that people are reducing their opportunity. And the saddest part is that it will not allow them the opportunity to probably become an engineer. Now they have to work on how they can feed their families and how. So we have to work on how we can eradicate child labor and how we can work with this pandemic. And it's a topic that we tend to hear a lot of it, but we do have a depth with children and adolescents as Elizabeth, Noemi, and Henry. And if we want to get out of this crisis, we have to work harder on this. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Vinícius. E nós estamos aqui hoje para isso. Como disse
Thank you, Vinicius. And we are here just for that, like you said it, just to make sure that childhood is not stolen. I believe this is a challenge. To study is a challenge. To be able to get your first job is a challenge. But
Desafio
living
que
through
os
all
diferentes
these
setores do mundo do
during
trabalho
pandemic, it's
enfrentam para
even a
potencializar
bigger
as
challenge.
oportunidades para os
And
jovens.
what is
Vamos ouvir
the biggest challenge that the different actors worldwide have to face? Let us hear the voices of the world of work.
On this commemoration of the World Day Against Child Labor, governments, employers, organizations, and workers' organizations want to listen to the adolescent and youth population of Latin America and the Caribbean.
El trabajo infantil es una de las manifestaciones.
Child labor is one of the most visible manifestations of inequality. Its consequences extend throughout life, the lives of those who have suffered this situation, limiting opportunities for personal fulfillment and community development. We know that the region continues reducing child labor, although not at the pace that we needed to achieve its eradication within the time frame given by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Terminou com uma taxa de desemprego juvenil na América Latina e Caribe equivalente a 40% das pessoas desempregadas da região. Naquele momento anterior à pandemia de Covid-19,
At that moment, the pandemic affected 6 out of 10 young people once they were able to get a job. Unemployment, informality, and inactivity are just some of the most visible challenges. The adolescent and the young population is especially vulnerable to the crisis situation of this pandemic. In this context, in the region, we are increasing the opportunities for decent work, both in urban and rural areas, and this is a valuable strategy to address this problem. Similarly, policies for the prevention and eradication of child labor are key in all dimensions, including the protection of permitted adolescent labor. These policies, which focus on children and adolescents, not only protect this sector of the population, but also articulate actions and labor policies that benefit their families and communities. We must also focus on the transition from school to the world of work in order to strengthen its development. So, how do we ensure that the participation of adolescents and young people in the labor market is the best possible, with social security, protection, and learning? It is not a simple question, but it is the one we must seek to answer when we talk about the world of work. That's why today we have come together to listen to and welcome the voices of the region's adolescents and youth in their role as agents of change. Knowing firsthand their interests and proposals will allow us to better meet the expectation of a generation that has been strongly impacted by this crisis. Today, more than ever, we are determined to achieve a region free of child labor and with adolescents and young people in protected jobs based on the values of social dialogue, innovation, and South-South cooperation. In this International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, the power to act, inspire, and scale up is in our hands.
E, sem dúvida, a adaptação para dar aulas e receber aulas à distância em tempos de Covid-19 tem implicado em uma
Without
série de
a doubt,
desafios
being able
para
to
adultos,
adapt during the
crianças, adolescentes.
COVID-19 times
Para a gente entender mais sobre esse assunto, eu quero
has implied a series of challenges for adults as well as for children, adolescents, and the young people. To better understand more about this topic, I would like to introduce Andrei Nascimento da Silva from Brazil, a young activist of the National Network of Adolescents and Youth of the National Forum for the Prevention and Eradication of Child Labor, Guadalupe Diaz Labra from Mexico, an educational intervene, and Paulo César Santos Moreno from Peru, an activist for the right to education. They have been inspired by some of the TikTok's challenges and trends to express their feelings about education in times of pandemic. We cannot wait to see what they have created for us. Go ahead.
Composição.
Professora, tá travando pra mim. Professora? Não acredito. Então, assim, professora, eu entendi essa parte, né? Porque a partir do momento que a gente consegue somar os algarismos juntamente com aquele...
Okay, I understand, Professor. Why are we...
Sua rua! Temos ó.
Bom dia, pessoal. Vamos lá, vamos fazer a chamada. Prestem atenção aí, todo mundo. Amanda Ferreira, Andrei Felipe.
Presente.
Nos hemos enfrentado al tienen que o tenemos que, refiriéndonos a la renuncia de nuestros derechos para cumplir con las necesidades básicas del hogar. Ser estudiante en tiempos de pandemia ha vulnerado la posibilidad de vislumbrar caminos que propicien un desarrollo pleno. La pregunta es qué hacer, cómo ayudar, qué programas ya están en desarrollo, porque ahora más que nunca, ser estudiante o infante es decidir si comer o aprender.
Muito bom, muito bom. Paulo César.
That was great. Pablo César, do you have a video you want to share with us? What has been presented is something that we are living and we have lived throughout this pandemic. Let us begin with Andrei. Andrei, tell us from your perspective, education on times of pandemic. Well, thank you, Monica. That was a video that I created talking about the difficulties that we have to go through while we have to study remotely. I wanted to share this with you because this is something funny, but at the same time is serious. And this is a challenge that went to 5.1 million boys, girls, and adolescents. And this is to show the scenario of the education in Brazil on April 19th by UNICEF and the Center of Studies, Research, and Community Action. Where is the right to education for those 1-point-something million of boys, girls, and adolescents? Through the pandemic, we are not only worried about our studies, but also we want to do a good job. Not all the boys, girls, and adolescents have access to studies. There are families with 4, 5 minors and only 5 minutes to study. There are printed activities for those students that do not have access to remote classes. But can they really do that whenever their parents sometimes cannot even teach them, or they do not have the digital or technology knowledge in order to help them? In 2019, there was a national survey by the NARCE, and it showed that in Brazil we have 1.8 million boys, girls, and adolescents in child labor. Just think about these children in the pandemic. How many of them are being affected by this pandemic? In Brazil, more than 500,000 people have died due to a virus that already has a vaccine. We cannot go back to classes if we do not get vaccinated because many of the schools lack of a good structure. We cannot stand this kind of life anymore. We cannot study like we do when we go in person to school. There are students that are being impacted in a negative way because of this pandemic. Thank you, Andrei. And I really liked your video. You have a lot of talent for video producing. Congratulations. Guadalupe, what about you? Hi, my name is Guadalupe Diaz Laura. Education in Mexico has been going through a critical process, not only because on this pandemic. The financial aspect has worsened the gap. The devalue of the skills, knowledge, and all the methods have created educational gaps that are extremely noticeable in these times. Reason why it is important to connect the past and the current actions. I mean, we need to place knowledge and share that in a similar way. It is important to go back to school so we can give way to the educational analysis in two times. One, the time that we were living before this pandemic, what we knew as our normality, and now the present, what we understand as the pandemic, the education online. And this last point is a fundamental aspect, considering that the educational gaps created unreachable links, leaving aside boys, girls, adolescents, and adults. Now, education is entering into a new crisis, a new normality. We have new questions to give continuity to public education, formal and informal. Was education valued before this pandemic? Is it going to be reconstructed out of time in the Mexican society? This is the moment to harness this gap and strengthen our connections. What is the perspective and what is a contingency plan that we have for the population post-pandemic? Will knowledge is going to be valued throughout the life? These are questions that we ask in Mexico. Thank you for the time.
Obrigada, Guadalupe. Eu adorei as suas palavras. Eu consigo sentir daqui a sua
Thank you, Guadalupe. I really liked your words, and I understand your concern.
Agora sim, Paulo César, é com você.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Now, let us give the floor to Pablo César. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Pablo Santos from Peru, and today I would like to talk about the virtual education during pandemic times in the Andeans and rural areas. For example, an important aspect, 6.7 of the native population has access to internet, and only 27.3 in the Andean areas have access to internet. That shows that in rural native areas, radio, television, and the digital aspect has changed education. And we know that because these digital techniques have not ensured an education of quality for boys, girls, and the young people. Children and adolescents have become community agents. They have used different tools, and the teachers are trying to connect with their students. That means that in many areas in Peru, for example, we have created laboratories where children are learning from the teachers and they are also learning from their families. During pandemic times, we have seen how the digital gap has increased inequalities, but we have seen also that teachers in the rural areas are getting closer to their students. And this is my final reflection. We have seen that even though we have a challenge as a society to get better connectivity in all the areas in the country where we still don't have the connectivity we wish to have, other actions have been successful. For example, developing institutional skills. Many times, these aspects are left aside, and the direct contact of the teachers and the students in the rural areas and native areas have allowed these to be valued. At the end, I believe that as young people, We have open questions, and the questions are, what's next for the future? What's next for these rural and native communities that have very little or no access to internet? Because even though we see progress on a social training, the right to a quality education is not being respected. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Paulo César, pelas suas palavras. Também percebo o quanto você conhece profundamente sobre os direitos.
Thank you, Pablo Cesar, for your words. And that is a deep comment. Thank you for sharing all this information with us. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Guadalupe, for your presence. Thank you for being here today, sharing your thoughts. We know that you represent all the young people from Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you. And with the arrival of this pandemic, the lockdown measures are making difficult sharing with people from one day to the next, and without being able to anticipate, spaces for study, work, and hobbies became just one. We know that the situation can be even more challenging in agricultural areas, where 70% of the total number of children and adolescents in child labor is concentrated. Now, I would like to introduce you to Vivian Silva Guedes Siquiera, a youth representative of the National Network of Adolescents and Youth of the National Forum for the Prevention and Eradication of Child Labor in Brazil, Yasmin Elena Alfaro, education activist in El Salvador, and Karen Mosqueira, representative of agricultural schools in Paraguay. Today, they bring us some memes today, not only to express their experiences of life in confinement or lockdown, but also to remind us what it is like to be young. If any of you identify with these memes, let us know. We all know the great impact that communication have in the media. We need to take these images seriously, because through these images, we find great power and positioning of ideas. Great. Do we have any other meme? Great. That's nice. Yes, these memes are very expressive. That's wonderful. Well, that's good. Thank you. Children and adolescents. I would like to hear from Vivian. Vivian, what are the biggest challenges of being a young person through the pandemic? Hi, Monica. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Vivian. I am an adolescent in Brazil. This is the moment for us to think, because more than ever, we need to get together and talk about child labor. Even though the pandemic created chaos, we need to pay attention to all the problems that arose. And because of this pandemic, we have created two blocks. One, when we are at home, and the second one, when we are at school and at work. The great difference is the possibilities that we have at home.
Muitas coisas porque há sempre muita coisa a ser feita. Eu já ouvi muito dizerem que serviços domésticos nunca acabam.
The house chores never end. We are at home, and if we are at home, we have to do our chores. Now, in this pandemic, these two spaces touch each other, and we have to adapt to do our chores and do everything we have to do at school. The productivity that we need to have in order to do several things at the same time. We must ask, do we have enough time to read a book, to do our homework? This makes everything very complex, because these are elements that we see in virtuality. We are at home, and this situation has affected everyone, not only physically, but also emotionally. We still need to work. We need to do our homework. We need to see our family. And many times there are elections or there are things that are not within our power. It is very difficult because sometimes we have to leave ourselves aside. And my last question for you is that the way we want to be in the future? Do we really want to be people that do not achieve their dreams? Thank you, Vivian. That is an excellent question and a wonderful thought. I would like to hear it from Yasmin. Hi, good afternoon. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you and share my experiences as a young person. I believe that in Central America, in El Salvador, one of the most pivotal moments were the lockdown measures taken in my country, to the point that for a month, I would say, there was a state of deception. That means the reduction of all the freedoms that we have as people and as guarantors of our rights. One of the most difficult moments was when a young person decided to go out to buy food and he was detained by the police. At the end, he was injured, he was shot in his leg, and we did not hear anything else from the state, so his family could be retributed. He needed to go out, he needed to buy food, and the measures that were standing at that moment prevented him to do that. Another thing was the fact that families were receiving a certain amount of money from the state, but the inequality and the way they distributed the money was extremely rare because we didn't know what families could receive this help. Maybe 2 or 3 members of the same family received benefits, and maybe there was other people that were going through a crisis or financial issues or were living in rural areas that did not receive this aid. Inequalities were very clear, showing those problems that are almost invisible to society for those that are in possibility to actually help the most vulnerable. I would like to also talk about the surveys carried out by the UN Group for the Sustainable Development for Latin America and the Caribbean. In that period of time, May, June, there were surveys carried out in the region with important data, and these data must alert us. Mainly 4 out of 10 young people were able to study full time. And what happened to the other 6 boys or girls that dropped out, or maybe they did not have any internet connection, or maybe they did not have the technological equipment that they needed, and they had to go with their families and find a job, find other resources, because unemployment went up. And unemployment has been really strong in our region. 1 out of 3 young people was affected in the number of hours they were able to work. Their wages were affected, depending on the country, and many of them even lost their jobs. I believe that for many of the young people, it happened to me. I don't know about the rest. And so far, we do not have a concrete answer for the sector that was deeply affected by this pandemic. So this data is already giving us a glance of the real problems that we have, the real problems that must be solved immediately. And what are we going to do? Are we actually taking into account the proposals from the society, the communities, proposals offered by other people? Are we going to receive the aid? Are we going to receive the support that will help us to overcome these problems in the region? This is not only going to be beneficial for a short time period. This is going to help the development of our societies and the common good that we want for everyone.
Muito obrigada, Jasmine, pela sua fala. As suas histórias, elas
Thank you, Jasmine, for your words. Your stories actually represent the stories of many young adolescents and families worldwide. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Karen, please tell us what are the main challenges for the young people in this pandemic?
estou te ouvindo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen. Well, the situation that all the children and the young people were involved when we study becomes complicated when we talk about education that cannot be carried out virtually. This mainly affects schools with systems of technical degrees, and people drop out because the lack of technology, and that's the reason why many of them decide to work with their families or try to find a job, delaying their academic development and the improvement or bettering of their future. Just like it was stated before, their dreams go down and they only think about sleeping, getting a roof over their heads, and eating. Different disorders are being seen: anxiety, depression, stress, because of the accumulation of issues in the social, personal, and family environment. The beauty standards that the community has created has actually affected a lot of people. Eating disorders, just to mention some. And this is just one out of the many situations that adolescents must go through in this difficult stage. And the pandemic is making it 3 or more times difficult than usual. And for this, it is necessary to implement professional help so we can care for our mental health. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Karen. Muito obrigada a todos por nos permitirem
Thank you, Karen. And I would like to thank you all for allowing us to have an idea of the great challenge that means being a young person in pandemic. Now, speaking of which, I would like to ask the audience, the most adult audience,
o que significou para vocês
what are your main
Contem pra gente.
what it is that you remember the most when you were a child, when you were a young person? For that, we have an essay, and we would like you to please answer this.
Pelo Zoom ou pelo Facebook. Deixamos a pesquisa na tela e agora nós vamos
You can do it here in Facebook. We are sharing this poll in the screen, and while you answer, I would like to share with you my personal experience. When I was a teenager,
algumas delas.
I harnessed an opportunity.
Gostaria de ter feito esse exercício de desenhar o meu
I really wanted to do more things.
para 10 anos. Então, se você tem 15 anos hoje, eu sugiro para você desenhar seu futuro
Nowadays, you are 15 years old.
para daqui 10 anos.
I would like to encourage you to think about your future when you are 25. If you are 18 now, think about your future when you are 28. I designed my future when I was 30. I think I was late, but it was a very good exercise. Now you have the opportunity to start even earlier than I did. Start thinking about the different steps you need to take in order to achieve your goals. Start designing your future today, because in order to build the future that you want in 10 years, the day you start planning is the first step. That's what I would like to encourage you to do. Let us continue. Okay. The crisis created by COVID-19 has increased the vulnerable situations worldwide. In a great part of the young population. There is a great difficulty of finding jobs. These are only some of the problems. The thing is that in this scenario, there is an environment that instills the increase of child labor because we don't see the horizon. This is a horizon that does not have a perspective of formal work that will have an impact in the investment of children and adolescents. In this line, it is important to have public policies and actions that create opportunities that will facilitate the transition from school to work. This is an urgent task, and it must be considered in the measure the countries implement all their actions to face this pandemic. That's why I would like to introduce Sergio Cabrera Calvache and Alicia Felipe Becerra Luz, a representative from Brazil, and Henry González Guevara, activist and creator committed to Afro-descendant people in Panama. Sergio, Annalisa, and Henry will share with us how they want to see their curriculum in 2030 in order to understand their expectations on the future of work. And what do young people need in order to achieve their goals, accomplish their dreams? I am going to talk about the opportunities that they need for the next year. Here are the curriculums.
And to work as in a magazine, in an academic magazine, and he is an activist on Medics Without Borders. And now, the resume of Analicia. Analicia, she dreams with having her own fashion business. And in order to achieve it in the coming years, she needs to gain some experience at the fashion industry and to be able to take some administration, informatic, and marketing studies. And she would like to speak Spanish. Henry, for 2030, he would like to have a stable work, and he would like to become an audiovisual creator. Up to now, he would like to have a PhD and master degree to continue fighting against inequality through what is his passion. Now, Sergio, what are your perspective on regards to the future of work? Well, greetings to all. I would like to share with you that many adolescents and children are out of the school in Colombia. 15% of the population is under extreme poverty and unemployed. Now, I would like to ask you, what is our main purpose in the world as citizens and leaders? To survive or to change life? How can we transform the life of our children and adolescents? My name is Sergio Cabrera. I'm a student of psychology, member of the foundation Creando Mejor, and I also believe in the education as a tool of social transformation. We should consider our Colombian children and adolescents as a future of our society to absorb main role and allowing them that their dreams can be projects that could be achievable. We want to include their voice in the measures that leaders will take in the world of work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sergio. Analisa, now we want to hear your voice. Hello, everyone. As Monica said, my name is Annalisa, and this is a wonderful time to be together talking about such a relevant topic, the future of work. We all know that in order to have a good quality of life and to be self sufficient, it would be important to have a good job in order to comply with the needs of the person and family. But let's think about this. What are we going to do now so in future we can have more self-sufficient people? The main solution, there is no doubt, that is the education. We as young people need education. We not only need education, but we want to have more opportunities in order to achieve the job that we want. We need more support, information, and advices to select a profession and to know where we can find opportunities at work and how to be qualified and to teach our future, as Monica said. We need to do this now, today, and for that, we need to invest in education. And we have to provide these young people so in the future is less hunger, misery, and more work, and more well-structured families with more physical and mental health and a
Muito
happier life.
obrigada,
Thank you very
Annalícia.
much.
Annalícia Luz,
Thank
meu
you
nome é
very
Luz.
much,
Você
Analicia.
sabe que eu sou especialista em futuro do
Luz,
trabalho
that's
também,
a
então
beautiful
entender do que
name.
vocês estão
And
falando
you
aqueceu
know
minha
that I am
concentração.
a specialist in the future
Adoro
of
aqui no
work,
seu
and the way that
ambiente.
you're talking, it really touched my heart. Now, I'll give the floor to Henry. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thomas Carnegie, él dijo
I would
que
like
que
to
esta es una
cite
mala época, estamos aquí para
the following
intentar
quote. This is a bad time.
¿Sabías que
We
la
are here to
provincia de
try to
Colón en
make it
Panamá,
better.
donde yo vivo,
Did you know
tiene los
the
puertos
province of
más
Colón in Panama
importantes del
has the
país y de
most
la región?
important
La
ports
zona
in the
franca más
country and the
rica del
region,
mundo y por
the
supuesto todos los
largest
recursos
free
petroleros del
trade
país.
zone in the
Todo
world,
esto
and of
suena a
course,
riqueza,
two
¿verdad?
locks
Pero no es
on the
así.
Panama Canal.
Aún
All this
existe
sounds
falta de
like wealth,
oportunidades
doesn't it?
laborales
But
para
it's
los jóvenes.
not.
¿Qué tal? Soy Henry González,
I
pertenezco a la
am Henry
organización
Gonzalez.
Contrapeso.
I belong
Trabajo
to
con
the
niños y
organization
afrodescendientes a riesgo.
Contrapeso.
Soy
We
creador de
work with
contenido.
Afro-descendant
Pero me
population that
gustaría seguir reforzando
suffers, and in future, I
precisamente
would
el
like to
derecho a las
reinforce
condiciones
the abilities
laborales,
and
la
to have
condición
a
de los
labor opportunity.
afrodescendientes sufre y
The
aqueja
young
profundamente al
Afro-descendant
país.
population
El desempleo
suffers
es una de
for
ellas
better
por el
days.
sistema patriarcal
Unemployment
que aún
is one of
existe en
them.
América Latina.
For the structural racism that still exists in Latin America, I propose that we have to promote the economy of Afro-descendant population in order to take into consideration our skills
Que
and
se convoque a un diálogo a los
abilities and competences. It's important to have a dialogue to approach these topics because they are excluded from the labor system and they are working in precarious conditions. It is so important to create a space to listen to the voices of the young people. And based on that space,
se pueda
of
proponer
this group of our population to propose possible solutions to the ILO to work together with the corresponding authority in each one of the countries in the region with national and regional views. We need
leyes y decretos
our
presidenciales de
governments
políticas
to
laborales y acciones
create laws of and policies that are positive for young people
tanto para la educación y la
and
seguridad de un
that
empleo.
could be accepted and applicable to the education
Y los
on the
jóvenes
benefit of all Afro-descendant young people.
Muito
Thank you very
obrigada,
much.
Henry. Eu fico muito
Thank you
feliz porque
very
todos nós
much,
ficamos muito
Henry.
felizes em ver que
We
vocês dois
are
estão
so happy to be
preparados para
here.
enfrentar esse
We are so
futuro. Nesse
happy to
discurso de
see
vocês, a
you
gente
so
consegue
well
perceber
prepared to
quanto
face the
conhecimento vocês
future
têm já à sua
in just
disposição sobre o
this
assunto.
information that you have
Muito
shared
obrigada.
with us.
E para
Thank
atender
you
às
so
demandas
much.
desses adolescentes e
And
jovens
in
incluídos no
order
diálogo social,
to comply with the demands of
inclusão desse
adolescents
grupo
and young
da nossa
people in the
população
social dialogue
no
is
mercado de
key
trabalho,
for an
compreendemos
adequate
que investir
insertion of this
ações educacionais
population
desde o
at
início e
at work, it's important to invest in their education and to channel all that energy, creativity, and talent. It not only allows to have fair societies, but also to create a more inclusive process. Now, based on this proposed and commitment to the topics that we have previously discussed, especially in the fight of a region free of child labor. I'll give you the floor. Thank you. We demand to the authorities the guarantee of the development of the child and young people that will make share in a lay and emancipating education to provide fair opportunities that will be needed for the most vulnerable groups. Let's not forget, as young people, that we are mediator within our context. Let's create support network from a critical perspective. Thank you so much. And well, our proposal is to develop spaces, community spaces of trainings to discuss topics on decent work that could be applicable to the native and Andean communities. Especially these children, they are in constant contact with nature. Therefore, we believe that they should learn more about these topics.
Cultura nas escolas, para que todas as crianças possam ter acesso.
Culture in school, so all children can have access to their culture and university, not only in Brazil, but in an overall culture. Thank you very much. In my case, I believe that it would be achieving the SDG 8. It would be essential that already countries have committed to reduce the proportion of unemployment on young people and to provide education to those that are not able to get it. I believe that all countries should bear this in mind. For those governments that are already commit to comply with it, it's time for action and not only to have it written.
Estamos te ouvindo, Karen.
Karen, you can go ahead. Secure work and opportunities, labor opportunities for young people. Because young people, sometimes we are not able to get a job, and that's why I emphasize on this. Secure work and opportunity, job opportunities. I would like to propose to the global leaders that are hearing me that support in Colombian young people that are on the streets claiming for better job conditions.
In
less than 3 years, we have been able to create more than 10 production where more Afro-descent population have been able to participate. It's extremely important to create a space to listen to the voices of the Afro-descendant where we can propose possible solutions to the ILO on the employability of this sector of the population through a regional encounter together with the organizations.
Precisamos de uma melhor qualificação dos jovens para terem seus empregos.
We request more opportunities, more trainings, technical trainings, a much better preparation in schools, at high school, and also to strengthen the education law. in order to have access to decent work.
E uma melhor qualificação.
As Karen said, we need a safe, secure, and much better qualified conditions for work. Connection here.
Escolas, né? Onde
My proposal is that
o Estatuto da Criança e do
the
Adolescente,
schools
lei que foi sancionada em 13 de julho de 1990, aqui no Brasil,
where
onde é um dos
children and adolescents
a efetivação dos direitos das crianças e dos adolescentes.
can participate,
Crianças e adolescentes sabem os seus direitos, são
and
crianças
it's
e
one of the main
adolescentes
instruments
nas suas mãos. E quando, a partir do
that
momento que
if they are able to understand their rights,
as crianças vão saber como e quando
they are
prevenir
going to be able to understand
que tanto acontece no nosso mundo.
when they can identify their rights violations. Thank you so much. I really enjoy hearing each one of you.
Tantas propostas aí
It
para esses nossos
makes us so happy to see all these young people with so many proposals. And because you are the main characters, we want to emphasize on your roles to be change agents. Now, please, let's all of you raise your signs. Excellent. Let me read some of them to increase awareness in the communities, in the employers, to participate on the fight against child labor and educational injustice, to absorb the responsibility on child labor. There's so many wonderful things here from these youngsters. And in order to receive all these proposals, I would like to give the floor to Ana Lopez.
Muchas gracias, Mónica.
Thank you
Muchísimas
so
gracias.
much, Monica. Thank you to everyone. I have to say that it has been so inspiring to be able to hear all of you. The content has been so interesting, and absolutely, we have been
Y diría que sobre todo
very impressed by the creativity.
compromiso social del
It's
liderazgo adolescente.
very fascinating to see the level of commitment of the youth leadership. It's something that we have to mention. We have listened attentively to the reflection, expectations, proposal, and commitments as representative of an entire generation in the region that is going through particularly challenging times. From our part, we're not only going to echo all this among ILO members, governments, employers, workers' organizations, but we want to receive and welcome all this information, all those proposals and commitments that you have offered us to connect them with our own proposals.
En el diseño de
We
propuestas.
must make a commitment to include the participation of adolescents and young people in the design of proposals on the school work
de este sector de
transition and the
población,
labor
en
market
definitiva, en el
insertion
futuro del trabajo, que
of
es su
this
futuro del
sector of
trabajo.
population
Cualquier
that is
medida que
your
mejore
future of work, any measures that improve the guarantee of rights of a generation that is in the present, but above all is the future of our region, will not only contribute to more inclusive and prosperous societies, but will also contribute to reducing child labor. As we mark the International Year Against Child Labor, we must do everything in our power so that there will be no more stories like those of Noemi and Henry. Thank you very much to all of you and see you soon.
Muito obrigada, Ana, por suas palavras, por estar aqui.
Thank you so much, Ana, for your words, for joining us, for hearing each one of the persons that participated in this session that has brought this information. It has been incredible and how much wonderful information we have been able to hear. But we have homework to commit and provide a better future for millions of adolescents and children. It would be possible in any area of action with youth leadership. We need to strengthen our children and young people so they can obtain their first job or create their own business. It's part of a process to strengthen the child labor and to strengthen these roles to avoid child labor. Now, I want to share with you a survey. I received the results on WhatsApp, and the challenge is that the adolescence is a stage of challenges. 17% believe that there are changes or more changes. Others believe that the adolescent is a time of commitment. And these were the results of the survey. And I want to invite you to dream all together. And with music that it's a universal language. And as part of the activities for the elimination of child labor, the ILO and the JM International, that it's an international network that works with music with children and adolescents, and it will have the support of the ILO that is fighting against child labor. And also, I have the pleasure to present you the winning song. And I will invite Jose del Valle. And with this, we'll let you go. And I give you thanks for all of you on participating in this event. Thank you very much for joining us today.